the Woodlands Water Agency Board of Trustees meeting. I'm going to start with a roll call. Trustee Ron Wilson. Here. Trustee Walt Lashevsky. Here. Trustee Neil Gaynor. Here. Trustee Brad Hauk. Here. Trustee Kent Maggart. Here. Trustee Keith Lincoln. Here. Trustee David Smith. Here. Alternate trustee Craig Ricard. Here. Trustee Bob Lux is here, and Trustee Paul Martin. Here. We have a full house, a full quorum. We'll begin with our invocations and pledges of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come to you today as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to work diligently, always for the common good and in the best interest of those who we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome to all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen.
Amen.
If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges of allegiance, please take an additional moment of silent prayer or reflection in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance to the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge allegiance to the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Okay. We have any requests to speak from the, okay. Agenda item 4, Mr. Bredehoff, update on Region H.
Good evening, Mr. President, trustees, members of the public. We had our meeting on the 2nd of October. That's our quarterly meeting for the fourth quarter. We're going to have a special meeting in December. Because around the corner is our initial draft of the 2631 plan. Has to be before the Texas Water Development Board by March. So at our meeting, we went through all the important points. Our consultant reviewed the entire plan. We're on track to meet the March deadline, and we're having a December meeting so we can go over a couple of other points that we have to make sure are in order to continue to be on track. We talked last time about the city of Houston, their East Water Purification Enhancement Project. And that went before the Texas Water Development Board. They approved that we can approve a minor adjustment for our 21-25 plan. So that was brought before us at our October meeting. We did vote to approve the minor adjustment to the current water plan. So the goals of the City of Houston project is to reduce groundwater usage, to increase and improve reliability of their current plant. So they want to expand the capability on that plant. So we did vote to make the change to our plan, and that now will permit the City of Houston to go down before the Texas Water Development Board and try to secure some funding on that project. So that was our second organization that came before Region H to get an adjustment to the current plan so that they could move forward to possibly get some funds down at the Texas Water Development Board. We've been notified by our consultants going to improve the Region H website, so stay tuned. We don't have a timeline on that, but it's under redevelopment to bring the standards into today's standards and also to make it a lot more user friendly. As far as schedule goes, we were having our special meeting in December. January will be the start of the 89th legislative session. Our legislative committee is underway preparing the necessary recommendations that Region H will take a look at and the full board will approve and then present them down to the legislative session. February 5th is our first meeting in the first quarter of 25. And that's an important meeting because that's the meeting that will get the final plan to review, approve, and be ready to present in March of 25 to the Texas Water Development Board. And then we had two good presentations by the Texas Water Development Board. The first presentation advised us that the first state flood plan was adopted, and this was because of Senate Bill number 8 that requested the Texas Water Development Board create a Texas state flood plan. And there's 15 regions that are involved in this flood planning group, and our region is in Region 6. And it's called the San Jacinto region. So that has already been done. And if you want to take a look at it, it's on the Texas Water Development website. It's very interactive and it's really informative on flooding. And this is our first plan for the state of Texas. And there's no stormwater or drainage fees yet in Montgomery County, but our friends to the south have these type of fees. So whether they come to Montgomery County, it depends upon the region, but there's no fees in Montgomery County for any charges for stormwater or drainage fees.
Is that a property tax fee based on property tax?
It's a good question. I don't know. It may just be a flat fee.
Based on impervious cover.
Is that just Harris County? Which county to the south?
It's Harris County and it's the city of Houston specifically.
Well, Arthur, people may be familiar, but the several muds on the east side of 45 around Oak Ridge had flooding problems. And so they created a separate drainage district, taxing district, because their muds weren't like us. They all had they could never work out. So anyway, they created by vote, probably 25 years, I don't know when, but anyway, at least 25 or 30 years ago, and they voted to create a drainage district over there that includes about 5 muds and I think Oak Ridge. And their drainage fee is, I think I checked, is like 10 cents over and above if it's created by the voters for those muds that affects the drainage. Just so it's not a countywide, but it's a group of muds over there that created a drainage district by vote. And now they can levy these.
Appreciate that. Well, they saw a need, they got together, they got the voters to approve it. And they created that district as you indicated to us. So thank you very much for that. The other part of the briefing was about the various financial instruments that could be available to MUDs and cities dealing with the Texas Water Development Board. And there's different types of fundings. There's funds for current water needs. There's funds for future water needs. There's funds for wastewater. There's about 15 type of classifications that you can apply to the Texas Water Development Board for funding. On the Region H Google Drive, there's our full presentation for the meeting, and it's also will be a separate, I broke out separately the 2 presentations by the Texas Water Development. In their presentation on financials, how to get financial support, they also talked about distressed MUDs. There are MUDs around the state that are distressed that may qualify for special funding. Most of our MUDs here would not qualify for special funding, but there are MUDs that are around us that may qualify for special funding, and there are MUDs in other parts of the state that are not as fortunate as the MUDs here in the Woodlands. But there's a whole set of criteria, and that you can see some of that on Region H's Google Drive. And that's pretty much a summary of the highlights of the meeting. A lot of technical stuff as we're getting down to the short timeline to get the final plan together for 26 to 31, present to the Texas Water Development Board.
Thank you very much, Arthur.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Very comprehensive. Okay, agenda item number 5. I don't believe Ms. Diaz is here, but Neil, you can give us the update on Region 6 San Jacinto Regional Flood Planning Group.
Yes, Ms. Diaz cannot be here. I'm an alternate on the San Jacinto Regional Flood Planning Group. The planning group did not meet in September, therefore there is no update. However, they are meeting tomorrow, and you can find details of that meeting on their website,
Sure.
sanjacintofloodplanning.org.
Thank you. Okay, out of acknowledgement of Mr. Millsap's time, we're going to move agenda item 13 up to just following agenda item 5. So, Mr. Millsaps, if you would please, we're
Appreciate the opportunity.
pleased to see you. Thanks for coming by.
I know a few of you guys. I haven't met all of you. I just really wanted to take the time with Mr. Lincoln inviting me to introduce myself. For those that know the name but don't know the face, I'm Jason Millsaps. I'm County Judge's Chief of Staff, but I also serve as the emergency manager for the county. So I wear 2 hats in my day job, which is also my night job. And so very, very busy. So I appreciate the moving me up because I do have guys in Florida right now, and I just got off the phone with them, and I'm going to be on the phone with them a lot tonight because they're going to be needing resources overnight and in the morning that we're going to be shipping to them. So long story short, as part of my job as the emergency manager, I also have the privilege of working on flood mitigation projects, and whether it be storm mitigation, flood mitigation, or we see issues coming up. Talking about the drainage districts that was mentioned just a minute ago, there's actually 2 of them in Montgomery County, DD6 and DD10. They're mostly on the east side of 45. But there is a piece of DD6 that crosses over 45 on the west side, south of Sawdust. They were created by legislative control, but they were created before homeowners lived in the district. So no homeowners voted for the district, just to be clear on that. They do extend out about 30 plus years, so they've been there a while. They currently they maintain the drainage projects that were built at that time, which made that land usable, which is the underground stormwater, and in the detention basin, they have some levees and things like that. So they do levy a tax in order to maintain that infrastructure. I believe the city of Oak Ridge contracts with DD6 to patrol their territory because some of the infrastructure is critical. And so with as many homes that are in the area now, you have kids messing with stuff and people riding motorized vehicles on the levees, which is actually against the law in the state of Texas. So the police officers there in Oak Ridge patrol that and take care of that for us. Outside of that, I'm managing about $70 million in infrastructure projects right now related to flood mitigation on a county-wide level, not necessarily Woodlands specific, but county-wide. These are federal projects that we've secured either through the Department of Homeland Security, flood mitigation assistance grants, hazardous mitigation grant program, or some through the Texas Water Development Board. They're in various stages of completion. Some are 90% of it's still in pre-development and award stage. These will help us with destagging, desilting our major creeks and streams in the county. There's one specific that will have an arming project on the San Jacinto River as it moves west or east of 45, depending on the time of the flood event, has an issue with Stewart's Creek draining into that same area. It swirls around right in just south of River Plantation. So we're working on arming that bank in Stewart's Creek to end the erosion that's going on there. If you get on a Google map and look at Mosswood and Magnolia Drive in River Plantation, just south of it, real close to the Cornerstone Church there, you can actually see where that swirl occurs because it has eroded into Magnolia Drive, and that street is actually closed today because of the erosion. And if you look at it, it's hard to tell from elevation, but you can walk out there and take a look at it. It's about 60 feet down to the creek. So the folks that live real close to that are really close to the drop off. They aren't able to drive up to their houses anymore because it's too dangerous to approach. So we've got those projects going on, and then I've got a scoping project I'm working on with Precinct 4, which has a piece of the Woodlands over on the Alden, not the Alden Branch, that's Precinct 2, on the Harper side of the Woodlands, and all the way out in East County. That project, as we develop it, will scope future flood mitigation projects. So we anticipate seeing about $120 million worth of projects from this one scoping project over the next few years. That I'm working with Commissioner Gray on, and he's taking an active approach to flood mitigation on the east side. As you know, that's where the majority of our flooding occurs in the county. Outside of that, our flood events in the county are actually fairly manageable. You see more flood events related to pre-NFIP homes built before 1984 that were pre-NFIP, and those homes generally are severe repetitive loss flood homes, so they happen a lot. We tend to not see a lot of newer homes after that flood or see damage from floods unless we have a 30+ inch event, and then no amount of infrastructure can prepare for that. So we work on that. That said, I'm gonna leave business cards for you guys. My cell phone's on it. You can call me anytime. David's known me for a long time. He's known me for a long time. I'm very accessible generally. I text and things like that. However, as you guys start to develop projects or ideas of projects, I encourage you to work with the county as a partner on this. I can be that partner, or I'll bring people to the table that can be better assistance than I can sometimes, because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, especially in the Woodlands. Projects that you guys will do may not benefit your constituency as much as it'll benefit our constituents, our neighbors, so to speak, south of us or further east of us towards Lake Houston. And so we want to work together as a partnership with that to ensure that projects are being done on a global scale for the county that benefit all of us and not just a few of us at y'all's expense. And then I can bring grant funds and things to the table with that. Work with the Central River Authority. I've worked with Ed for a number of years before he was with the River Authority even. So we have a good relationship with those guys, and where we can partner with the River Authority, we do. Not everything in flood mitigation is prudent in the politics world that I have to wear the other hat for being the chief of staff. But yes, we do work with those guys when we can, and I'd be glad to take questions. It doesn't have to be about flood. I know that's y'all's primary thing, but
I was listening to radio today.
yeah.
They said that the governor has identified, $50 million for costs related to flooding from the hurricane. And one of you heard about it, but they said basically the comment was the city of Houston delayed raising property taxes in anticipation of participating in that $50 million.
There'll be more eligibility for Houston for that particular pot of money than for us. We didn't see flooding as a result of Beryl. We saw flooding a few months before Beryl in May, and then earlier in that in January. And none of those events were because of rain that fell here. The majority of those flood events were rain that fell in our northern watershed and had no choice but to pass through the lake, had no choice but to come through the dam and cause some downstream flooding to protect the rest of us from catastrophic flooding if they wouldn't open the dam. So we have situations like that. It's hard for people to understand. You know, I recall being in a helicopter in May flying over River Plantation, and knowing after talking with Ed and his team that we were probably 6 to 8 hours away from seeing a severe flood event on the Central River, specifically for River Plantation. And folks were out. It was a blue sky day. We didn't have any rain that day. It was a great day. It had rained so much in Walker County and even further north in Madison County that it was just taking its time to get here, and it was coming. And we landed, and the judge said, Jason, you're gonna have to issue an evacuation order for that area because they're not heeding the warning. And we issued the voluntary evacuation order. And then I went out there later that evening as the news crews got stuck in the water as it rose, and they called the EOC for help. So we went out there to help bail the guys out. And I remember standing very vividly in front of a house on the street. Lady come up to me to talk. The ants and the cockroaches and all the bugs were going to higher ground. And that's not a joke. And she says, well, it's not going to be that bad. And I looked over at her house, which is slightly lower than the street, and said, where we're standing now on this road will be 6 feet of water in the next 5 hours. I'm 6 foot even. So I said, right here. And I kind of did this and pointed at her house. I said, that's how much water you're gonna have a house. I highly recommend you get what you can and get out. Went back the next morning with the boat, and there was a little bit more than that in our house. There was a lot of people that weren't heeding the warnings, getting the cell phone alerts and the geofenced alerts, telling them. And you're seeing that now in the news in Florida and other places. People just ignore those things. But a lot of people, that flood event would have been a lot worse had the county not been very active in flood buyout properties. We do a lot of flood buyout properties. I average about 60 a year buying homes out that flood a lot. And so that does two things: keep the people safe and keep first responders safe. We don't have to put first responders in the water to save people who ignore warnings. And it takes that property off the market, turns it into a park. So we will continue that. We have about another 354 homes identified that we can buy out. We have funding for about 150 of them over the next 6 or 7 years. So as these events occur, we're always going out for additional grant funds to continue to add to that list and homes. And some of them flood a lot. We bought one out last year that flooded 30 something times, from small amounts to large amounts. But it's circumstantial. I mean, the home, if you look at it, it's literally like a New Orleans style home. The ditch is higher in her front yard than her house is. So when it does overflow the ditch way, it goes right into the home. And so we got them out of that situation, but it took them probably 25 times before they raised the flag and said, please help me get out of this, after we offered and offered and offered. The county will not make it mandatory, so we'll never use eminent domain to buy out a house. And as a result of that, our neighbors south of us do. Harris County uses that. And I agree with that to some extent, but here it makes no sense. And we have just a few of those homes that we really, really want to buy out, but waiting on the owner. So, but yeah, great question, David. Yes, sir.
So we've had a couple presentations on One Water Task Force, and it seemed like that was much more of a county-wide activity than a Woodlands activity. So if you engaged in that, do you have a thought about
I
what?
know a little bit about it, but I have not been engaged in it. It's an unusual thing as groups like this and others, the River Authority is very engaged in flood mitigation stuff. They, we talk in passing, but I have not been brought to the table. I can't say that I haven't been invited. I'm pretty sure I have. It's just as things go on, it's not the top of my priority list. One is because of funding. The counties will spend some funds to work on flood mitigation projects, mostly to identify sources of funding and match those funding source needs to get those grants. Because we don't have a flood control district. Voters in the county rejected a flood control district back in the 90s, and there's just not been an appetite with it. With only about 1,500 homes threatened by repetitive flooding, I don't see politically passing with an additional tax. And so because of that, we use some strategy to acquire funds. So, but I'm interested, one, because I don't want to duplicate an effort. As we review these plans that some of these other groups have done, we find that they may be working on something we're working on, and I could bring my grant funding to the table and help them in that and save that group money as they move it to another project on the list. So that's where we would really want to partner and make sure there's no duplication of efforts.
Thank you, Jason. Really nice to see you again.
Absolutely good to see you.
Show up anytime.
Don't make it so long this time.
Yeah, I know.
But I will come
You're a lot
anytime you've got
closer now.
something that's needed, and it doesn't have to be water infrastructure related. MUDs have a broad latitude of things that they do in county government or in local government. So if you need anything from the emergency management side of things, I'm always available. If you need something from the county government side of things, I'm always available. And like I said, I'll leave my business cards here on the table. You guys can reach out anytime. So.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for moving me up, although I would love to stay. I told Keith yesterday, I'm on a 4-hour notice to get deployed. And I think they're going to use me here to do things instead of sending me there. I'm a lot cheaper.
Your priorities are well structured.
So, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we now move to the consent agenda, items 6, 7, and 8, pages 1 through 17 in your meeting packet.
Move to accept as presented.
We have a motion to accept as presented. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Did you get that, Shelley? You got both? Okay, and is there further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Get to abstain because you weren't here. Okay, so
I abstain.
you abstain. So the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we now move to agenda item 9. Receive the monthly SJRA Woodlands Division Report. Mr. Meeks, good evening. Pages 18 through 36.
That is pretty normal month, nothing really out of the ordinary, but if you have a question on something you've seen in there, you have to answer.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
on page 19, in the monthly account for water law,
Yes.
there's a flush hydrant in preparation for sampling at a residence, it would appear. Can you
Which one? Oh, yes, 19 Thistlewood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of our sample sites for TCHM's disinfection byproducts.
Oh, okay.
And so we're trying currently to get that location moved because it's kind of like on a dead end, not a lot of movement. So we have to flush it a very long time to get fresher water.
I got you. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why that's
a lot more, yeah.
That is a lot of water.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I just have a quick question. On page 31, you have these current fund balances. And when you look at the identifying, it says target, payment due, balance. What's the target? Is that the, like the operation and rate stabilization reserve? The blue means that's the balance, but is there a target that's on that graph or?
I mean, they're overlapping, and this is the GRP report. So in this case, they are overlapping.
There's a little tiny.
On that
Tiny
very
bar
top.
at the very top.
above the
At the very
24,
top.
yeah.
To be top, yeah.
That's the target now. Why don't we put an asterisk instead of a bar or something so you can?
That's the way the GRP review committee prefers it.
Okay.
And so being there reported, they request a change, I'll be happy to make a change.
Yeah, I understand why. You can't see if you're full.
Right, well, and also keep in mind, forever today, GRP's never been full. So this is,
Oh,
really the last couple of years is when they had money, but that's a good point. Typically could look at a color change or something. But
yeah.
Yeah, I'll chat with the president.
I'd like to make a comment, since it's the River Authority. I went to a function a couple weeks ago, and I got a PR piece from River Authority that apparently they hand out just as, and it's a hard one-piece copy, but I sat there and looked at it, and then down in the far left-hand corner, there was a comment that says, SGRA's Woodlands Division's wastewater treatment plants 1 and 3 won wastewater treatment plan of the year at Texas Water 2023. So I went through and found that award or the story and gave everybody a copy of it. And I don't really have any comment other than the fact I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Now, the folks that were on the board before us new people, I don't know whether you ever heard that, saw that.
Yeah, we do.
But anyway, my only comment is that that was the same month that they received the award, that they came out with their capital improvement plan, that they recommended junking the same plant that they got wastewater treatment in the plant, or wastewater treatment of the year award for the state of Texas. That's my only comment.
Very good. Okay, anything else, Chris? Excuse me, sorry.
Page 19, water losses. So we based upon our maybe overly optimistic expectation, we dropped the budget amount to 4%. And now first month into the year, we're at 5.1.
So one thing to keep in mind, and this is one change I am going to make, is this is a rolling 12. I'm also going to add another box as long as space permits to show the fiscal year average.
Okay.
That way it's more of a apples to apples comparison.
Are we concerned that, I mean, one of our common feedback is point data is nice, but trends are really important. Is the 5.1 trending up or is it?
It's actually lower than that. When I do the fiscal year and the calendar year, it's a lot lower than that. So in other words, we're at about 4.5 right now, give or take.
Which is still over a half over budget then.
Correct. Now that 0.5% equates to roughly $75,000 out of the 43 bank dollars.
Okay.
So it's not a huge impact if I've been too aggressive.
Okay. Next, page 20, the 12-inch line that broke. So it's a PVC line. I don't see a root cause. Do we know what the root cause of that crack was?
In this case, we do not. We could pass it to engineering, have them take a look at it, but it was a 6-foot crack along the bottom of it. Normally, if we see a rock or something where it's been offset or something like that, we can pinpoint it. But in this case, I don't know if Eric, if you have an idea, but it was just a 6-foot crack.
What about?
Manufacturing fault, you think?
There's no telling.
Okay.
There's no way to tell that. Could be earth movement, could be pressure, a lot of different things. It wasn't hit. We know that.
Okay, okay.
Which was unlike last night, which I'll talk about.
Thank you.
Anything else, Chris? That'll move us to, agenda item number 10, with the, discuss the GRP and how water is sold. Mr. Shackelford?
Yes. Good evening. Y'all had asked about some information on the GRP as described in the agenda item. We're deferring any presentation tonight for a couple of reasons. One, we need to make this presentation to the GRP Review Committee before we can share that publicly. And that GRP Review Committee meeting is October 21st at 11:30, and it is live streamed. It is live streamed, so you watch it at the comfort of your home or at your office. And then we're happy to come back and share that information with you at your November meeting.
So Ed, you're gonna present to the GRP how the SJRA is gonna sell water.
Because there is still some confusion with the GRP Review Committee members. Yes.
They don't know necessarily how it's sold.
They know how it's sold, but they get confused on, they've asked a similar question of, if you're selling more water, why isn't the price cheaper? So that's part of the presentation.
Just talking through that equation.
Yes. And how we price water.
At about a year, I haven't been in about a year and a half or a year. There was some of the MUDs that are paying the GRP fee, but not getting water, wanted to join. And result of that discussion, you guys are going to hire a consultant.
Correct.
To study that. Is that report available?
I think it's still in draft form. I haven't seen the final on the GRP rate study.
The special assessment,
Right.
it has been completed. It is available through open records request. Just keep in mind when you do look at that, if anybody does look at that, that is based on the FY 23 budget. It has not been updated to FY 25 budget with a rate reduction.
So what's the title of that?
I do
Something
not
like
know
that, if I sent a note that they would recognize it.
So when you do an open records request, it's going to come to me at some point. So if you say the GRP special rate assessment,
Okay,
I'll know what you're talking about.
okay, good.
Since you're both right there, why don't we, in the interest of time and your time, can we move to, agenda item 16 to discuss the, 2015 CDM Smith report? You have
I can prep, I received a request from trustee Howe to, put it on the agenda to look at that and discuss that. Report. That report was, done in about a decade ago in 2014, and then it was finalized January 2015. Trustee Howe provided me some questions, which I forwarded to the SJRA, and the results and answers to those questions, responses to those questions are on page 37, just to print everybody.
Can I provide more background?
Yep,
So my questions were prompted by trustee Gaynor's comment in the August meeting that the number of studies provided the foundation for the recommendation to replace wastewater treatment plant 1. And the CDM Smith 2015 study was included in that list. So that's why I'm trying to make the connection between that 2015 study and the current recommendation to replace wastewater treatment plant 1. Okay. So.
I'll take what little bit from there. I can't speak for Dr. Gaynor and his statement, but item number 1 addresses that. And as Eric said, it is a decade-old study. There's a lot of items in there that we did fix and correct, but there's also additional items in there that we did not fix and correct. Okay. And so I believe that goes into items 2, 3, so on and so forth. So hopefully the answers are suitable and answered appropriately. But thing is, we are not using this as a catapult to say this report 10 years ago is the reason it needs to be replaced. The Corello study and the Friesen-Nichols report are the updates to the 2015. Since conditions have changed since then, there have been some new reports done, or excuse me, there have been some repairs done, and there are new reports coming out. So our basis is not going to be basically a 2015 report. It's going to be the most recent reports, state the condition.
I understand that, but when the statement's made that this report serves as a foundation for the current recommendation to replace the plant, and you go back and look at it, and there's nothing in this report that indicates a need to replace the plant. There's a number of recommendations to do maintenance, but nothing that says the plant as a whole should be replaced.
What I'm saying is those statements didn't come from the River Authority. Right, I mean, so I've answered
Yeah,
the
okay.
questions I could, so I'd have to turn it over.
Yes, I did say it was foundational. That doesn't mean it's the report you act from. You build a foundation. What is a snapshot in time of the condition of the plant? And subsequent to that, other studies were conducted and with repairs and upgrades being made, like, for example, the belt press, I think, as a good example. Now, following that, there were further studies on the aeration basins, I think. And then there was a major study, well, a relatively major study on odor. And that was then canceled by the Board of Trustees at the time, if I recall, because of the extraordinary cost, $1.5 million, something on that order.
Something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number. But it was at that time, if I recall correctly, that a review of what should be done in terms of strategy in dealing with wastewater treatment plant one or wastewater treatment facility one. Should there be a consolidation with treatment plant two? What should happen? How should we proceed in making upgrades or replacing or whatever? And then what that then resulted in was deferral, if I recall, of a number of projects at the plant, so that the study by Fries and Nichols could take place, and arising out of that, some specific recommendations were made. So I used the term foundational correctly, I believe. There was a snapshot in time, and action arose out of that assessment. And also, there was a second, more comprehensive assessment by Fries and Nichols, which was, I guess, rejected because we're having yet another study by Carollo engineers, right? Is that the correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that is due next year sometime, but there's going to be an intermediate product arising out of that study coming next month on decision, right?
Matrix
Decision.
by November 1st.
Yeah, okay. So we'll be in a better position, hopefully next month, to see what the circumstances are with regard to what project looks the most viable, the most reasonable.
Neil, if I may, and I think
Yes.
it's correct. What you will receive in November is the draft decision matrix that will be used to evaluate the study.
Okay.
It will not have any results of the 4 options that are being considered.
That's next year.
That's April or May.
Yeah.
Timeframe.
Thanks for that clarification.
So Neil, I remember back in the summer of 2022, we were talking about the odor control. And I thought you had stated that you had done a calculation and you didn't find it was necessary that the odor control project be done. Do you remember that?
No, I do not.
You're not, huh?
I certainly did a back of the envelope
Yeah, that's.
modeling study.
Yeah, modeling study.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
So, well, there's more to the background than that. First of all, as I put in, that I'm not licensed to offer opinions in the state of Texas. I can offer my own personal opinion.
please do.
And there were certain areas, first off, measurement of the H2S concentration across the fence line were always within the TCQ limits, as I recall. Therefore, there's no necessity then to spend $1.5 million for a biotrickler system. But when you look at the dissipation of odor, it falls off quite dramatically away from the treatment facility. Now, people have different susceptibilities to rotten egg gas in terms of it being annoying or nauseating or whatever. But there's a spectrum on that. At no time, I mean, we're talking about parts per billion in concentrations here. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be money poorly spent, frankly, in building a special bio trickler for this aging facility.
We're a touch off topic. I believe it was about the CDM report. So, anything more on the?
Yeah,
I appreciate the answers. Very good. Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I have some, other, there's in that CDM report on page 39. Yeah, I don't have any copies, but to give one for SRA. And in it, this was published in January 2015, and there seems to be some TCEQ regulations that were issued 12 months later, but in here it says the clarifiers 1, 2, and 3 meet their requirements. So I guess I'm curious to know what was issued, 12 months later that makes those things unfit to maintain. And then another, just so you add on, I think in looking at the clarifier construction, at the same time we constructed clarifier 3, right, we also constructed 2 clarifiers at wastewater treatment plant 2. So if these 3 clarifiers don't meet the regulations, what about the 2 and wastewater treatment plant number 2? And I'd like to, I've been going through, I'm not an expert, I've been going through the Texas documents, the 30 Tech, chapter 217, and looking at the wording, and I'd like to know what chapter and paragraph, when you make those statements, where do they come from, chapter and paragraph of that regulation? That'd be something I wouldn't mind spending time studying.
Are you talking about the origin of what's in chapter 217?
No, I understand the origin. I guess what I'm saying is that you're saying that the clarifiers cannot be repaired based on,
So let me back up to one of your original questions. This study was done in 2015.
that's right.
In 2017, we also had a wastewater optimization study done through Freeze and Nichols. That is one of the documents that have been requested before and should be on your flash drives. That was done for the 6 and final accounting. As part of that, it also included a I&I study, if you will, of some nature. It was not a study itself, but it looked at the peak flow at the facility as well as the dry weather flow at facilities. That was done 2 years after this report was done. And so when you had mentioned there was a report that was done 2 years later, that is my assumption. I have not memorized this report. It's 10 years old.
I realize that.
And so there's additional stuff, 3-9. But it may meet TCEQ criteria back in 2015, but once you have site-specific data that shows it does not meet it, then you may have to do modifications based off of that.
So you're saying the 217 report will provide that?
Chapter 217?
No, the Nichols Freeze 217
Yeah, the
publication.
2017 wastewater optimization study will show you the report that actually talked about the peak flow and the clarifiers needed to be rehabbed as well as lift stations and other items. I think it was about $80 million and stuff.
Okay, so thanks.
David, in that same report, there was also a statement in there that said those clarifiers were only 10 foot deep, and which is not the typical design of clarifiers. And so there was a recommendation based on one of that aspect that they ought to be designed to the current standards. And I was looking to find out where that was.
Yeah, you would replace 1 and 2 with a new one
And
and
then
not build a new plant.
once you start that starts the domino effect. And one of the aspects of the Corolla study is to identify, once you do certain things, what other rules get triggered with the plant.
Just add on, that is part of question number 3, looking back through the regulations. Majority of the facility was built under the old TCQ 317 regulations. And then it states in here the dates and the times and everything else, try to give you a little bit more structure so you can understand. But there was a point in time when it switched from 317 to 217 regulations. And so I've listed the items that are covered under the 217s. And the clarifiers listed under 317 regulations, which this states 217 regulations. So just to add some complexity.
In the Corolla study, that there's going to be these regulatory triggers. That's not in the November 1st matrix.
No.
That's in the next year's.
The matrix, all it is going to provide you is recommendation on how the 4 options should be evaluated and scored. And you all will get that draft, have an opportunity to look at it, offer some comments back to us so that we can finalize that matrix.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Next time. Agenda item number 11, Mr. Eichelberger. Good evening. Nice to see you.
I do not have anything specific under the attorney's report, but I think I might be up for the next item, so.
Yes, sir, you are.
And,
Yes, sir, you are. The agenda item number 12 was requested by trustee Maggard. And Mr. Eichelberger is here to address that topic.
Reason I put that on the agenda is that for you folks that haven't been here, there have been what I call professional mud directors over the last 20, 30, 40 years. In fact, we had a chairman of this committee that was a mud director, had a mud director's lot for many years, even though she was originally in a mud. We've had several instances. And so anyway, I understand the reason for mud director lots. But the problem is that if you want to direct mud director lots, you go to the developer. In other words, that's been and of course, then who do your loyalties lie to if you have a director's lot granted to you by the developer instead of the residents? And what brought it up is probably most of you don't know, but the lady that sat in this chair ended up and moved out of Mud 36 about 6 months before the election and was granted a mud director's lot so she could stay on the board at least until the election. And I think we're mature enough in the Woodlands that I'm not sure legally, you can tell me this, but why we can't, I don't know whether we do it on an individual mud basis, but we put in, whether it's bylaws that anybody that's a mud director has to be a resident of the mud or own a residential property. In other words, I understand, you can have a rent house and you own property, but just going out and say, hey, I'd like to be a mud director in mud so-and-so. And anyway, that's my question. And I think that mud can go out and actually, since they don't have to be contiguous, I can go buy a lot and sell mud lots and have the mud annex those lots. I believe I can do that. But the question is what I'm trying to get to is we got a mature 10 muds here, and we need to get out of the mud director lot business and have people that are on these boards be residents or residential property owners. That's the reason it's on there.
How many directors are currently qualified for their position through a mud director's lot?
I don't know.
Zero. And what happens to the mud director lots once the former person, I guess, is no longer a director? Because I know I have at least 2 and 39 that were former directors on mud director lots. What happens to those lots?
They're deeded back.
Back to the developer.
Original.
So they don't really own them. They own them for a political reason.
They own them, but then
Yeah.
to get rid of them, then they will come.
Right,
in
if
and
they
convey them
lose their
back.
bud director's lot job, they,
Said it's-
I assume there's something in the document that says once you are no longer a mud director, that your ownership disappears or something.
And just
Typically,
not
I think that would
immediate.
be the
I
case,
mean,
yeah.
Someone has to take an action to move that piece of, this is called taxable property back to someone else. I mean, in essence, they own it.
Correct. It's a
They-
private
It's a
transaction.
private transaction.
Yeah, and that, yeah, it's a private transaction. So, I mean, to kind of get back to the fundamental question, I think at hand, and this is a state law issue, and unfortunately, there is no ability for an individual district to regulate around that. So it's a qualification issue for whether or not somebody can be a director. So there's two ways to qualify. One is obviously if you're registered to vote within the district, you qualify to serve. The other is to own property. So that's a state law requirement, and it's not controllable at the individual mud level, whether that be here in the Woodlands or any other mud or a WCID. We're talking about WCIDs earlier, management districts. That's uniform across the state as the special district. Most special districts, there may be some unique districts that might be different, but water districts, that's the program, uniform.
So if I wanted to give somebody a piece of my lot in mud 36, I notice it's 0.02 acres, but, then, they could become a mud director, right? If all I gotta do is, I know this is just my talk. I know I can't do that because of the way they're platted. You can't
Sure.
subdivide, but I'm just saying, using that example, I could go over here to Oak Ridge Drive, and there's all kinds of people over there that got for sale signs, and I could go over there and buy a lot and then say, hey, anybody would like to be a mud director in the 10 muds and mud in the Woodlands, I'll sell you a director's lot.
I think to get, kind of
Or not, I
granular,
don't even have to sell it
Yeah.
because the development company doesn't sell it.
right?
They just say, hey, and then they, I assume, expect quid pro quo down the line, makes it.
Well, I mean, to get kind of to your original question, I mean, I don't know that scenario has been tested. I know there's been some case law. It's been quite some time since I looked at it, but I know there's been some case law, I think it's in Florida, where there was kind of sham transactions that were taking place where it was very clear that it was kind of just, the person didn't really own the land and it was such a small piece of property. And it was ruled to be invalid. So the statutes don't really put a clear boundary on that, but I would say that there's got to be some substance to, it's got to be a real arm's length transaction and a real piece of property of some size to probably pass a smell test. Does that address your question?
I'm just.
Yeah.
You're telling me legally that anybody can give anybody a piece of property in a mud and to another individual. The the developer's not charging, they just give it to them. So.
There'd be a promissory. There's a promissory.
Voters out of it. I mean, the voters have got to vote the mud director.
Yes, so
I mean,
No, I understand.
that's kind of the second piece.
But the problem
The
in
check on the
the
district
problem in
level.
this case is it happened between elections.
Right. But then that person would have to sit for election. Everybody's got to be elected and the rules are the same.
No, I understand.
Director allowed or no director
I'm talking
allowed,
about,
it's the same.
you got to
same
answer
program.
4 years of having an unelected board director.
Well, let me say something too, that, I think because of your point that there are 10 well-established districts, that I think we're past that. I don't think that.
6 months ago, you weren't.
Just the result of the last election.
No, I mean, I'm talking about,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that.
Is it a state law? Is it taxable property?
I believe it is taxable property. Yeah.
I've
yeah.
noticed in these mud lots.
Yeah.
That the Montgomery County Appraisal District.
Yeah.
Assesses 0 tax on them. So does that mean they still qualify as a mud lot? They don't tax 1 penny on those mud lots.
Yeah, they should be taxed.
But they're
They
not.
should be taxed, yeah.
Are they?
Yeah,
They should be.
They are taxable.
Are they taxable from
Yeah.
you or taxable from MCAD?
Everybody.
Everybody. Well, I just looked at the tax reporting form
All
and it has zero value, tax owed.
I think our two, that, and Mud 39 had a value of $100.
Yeah, the ones I've looked, my old mud lot, I mean, not my mud lot, but that was in my, had zero tax. And then another thing is that,
MCAD does the value of the director lot in the taxing jurisdictions. They pay just like you all.
yeah, I know they do. I just know it just looks like that. I'll look again.
Yeah, that shouldn't be the case.
Should be the
I think
case.
it should be
Should
taxed.
has to be taxed.
Yeah.
And that next question is, I think this is we're mostly in Houston's, ETG, right?
Yeah.
We're in Houston's ETG. And Houston establishes a minimum size for a recordable lot. And it's, some of these lots that I've looked at don't meet that requirement
Right, for subdivision, for a plat.
right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't apply to mud lots? No.
No.
Okay.
No, it would get back to kind of that unclear standard. I mean, I think typically there has to be some substantive piece of property, not particularly large or particularly valuable, but there has to be some real piece of property that you can tag into. You can't, it wouldn't be something that would be so small that you wouldn't, you could argue that you don't really own
You
it.
go back to Keith, Keith mentioned his mud. So about 2 years ago, they had an annexation. And they annexed an area. And there were only, I've heard there were 5 residents on that annexed area, but 2 people voted for it. Some of Keith's residents went to vote for it and they found out they really went in the annexed area, so they couldn't vote. So, and then you go to find those voters and you can't find them anywhere. They're not on the voter registrar. I mean, they're on the voter registrar, but it's really, really looks odd.
Well, I think that would be, I don't know the facts
Yeah, I
and
know that,
circumstances,
but
I
I'm just
wouldn't want
saying,
to opine, but that would probably be a different issue than
Different
the
issue,
director
yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
That would be more of a, what does it take to be qualified to vote?
Yeah.
To establish residency to vote
You remember that.
versus own a piece of
We had
property
residents
to establish residency or own a piece of property to establish qualification to serve. I think those are kind of two separate issues.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just
So it does exist. It happened 2 years ago.
just to clarify on the mud director's lot, he said it has to be substantial. In order to make a change to what allows a mud director's lot to exist and for somebody to be able to occupy this as a director under that. I mean, you said that's a state law, that's got to be changed at the state level. We can't do anything about it here.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And that there's currently there's no directors that sit within any of our 10 mud boards that are in their seats because they qualify under a mud director's law.
Except
I don't know the answer to that, Eric.
Except for you guys.
Yeah.
Metro.
None of the
Metro,
residents.
yeah.
Metro's a commercial district in there.
None of the residents.
John, anything to add from a legal perspective so we can wrap this up? We've been at this for about 25 minutes.
I think that's all I've
Let
got.
me ask you one more thing. Yes, we have,
Before I go, Bob said,
I'm on this, since this is my agenda item, Walt brought it up, and I'll tell you, I'll tell you a story about Mud 39, but essentially, it was indifference on the part of the voters that the reason these people stayed in office, indifference. And so that's neither here nor there, but I want to know, this person here sat in this chair, and 6 months before her term expired, she got a director's lot and continued in this seat. And my question is, does the board have to approve that? So I can go down and say, she ended up and she went to the developer and said, hey, can you give me a lot so I can stay on this board? And nobody approved that.
I mean, the developer.
No, I'm
the
talking
developer-
about on the mud
At the board level, no, because
No,
the
no,
board
that's-
doesn't have authorization
no, no,
to another director, so.
So you
You
can't.
can't, as long as a director remains qualified, the remainder of the board can't remove another director. To my knowledge, the only way a director can be removed is by the TCEQ in an instance where they don't show up for, I think, 6 consecutive months to a meeting, then there's an option that they can be removed. I don't think that almost ever happens, but there's no other mechanism, because that could come up in other circumstances where you'd have some other situation. To my knowledge, there's no mechanism whereby somebody could be removed. So as long as you maintain your legal qualification to sit on the board, remainder of the board wouldn't have a say in whether or not, because your qualification changed, you're still qualified, so you can't be removed.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that input. Thank you.
You could sit here over here.
General Manager's report. Mr. Peterson, please.
All right. A couple different. Well, just one thing I just point out, there was a pretty significant water line break last night. Directional drilling company, sub of a sub of sub. Hit a 12-inch water line at the northeast corner of Research Forest and Research Park. So we're up, our staff was up pretty late, working with Esther as well, trying to get that wrapped up. And that's all I have.
Very good.
So is there something happening between WWA and the township about AstroTurf? Installation of AstroTurf?
So there was it was on the news, we found out. We managed the stormwater pollution prevention across the Woodlands. And there was an anonymous report or tip from someone that went to the TCEQ that said, I'm not sure that stormwater pollution prevention, usually silt fence basically, is properly placed. And so TCEQ reached out to us, and our engineer LJA, who helps manage that, we went out and looked at it, and in fact said, hey, you need to put get your SWPPP, implement that, and get it in better position. So that was what that was all about.
And the township contractor took care of it?
Yes, we were in contact with the township and essentially said, typically in any project, there would be an engineer that puts together SWPPP, and then it's the contractor's job to implement that. So we said, just make sure you implement the plan that's in place for that particular project.
Is that a Falcon Lane? Park?
I don't recall.
Okay. Thank you, Eric.
And- Can I ask a question? So, has the WWA had any complaints about odor from treatment plant 2?
We haven't, other than there was a resident that showed up at a board meeting last month, and we were gonna give him a tour. And Esther, he was gonna work with Esther, right, to go out there and take a look at it. There's only been one resident.
So there was one, okay.
Was it 160?
I think it
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, it's,
was 60.
we're in, I mean, I'm represent 7, which is the closest, I think, to the treatment plant. So I was surprised that complaint went to.
Pardon me, Brad, for interrupting. He was a treatment plant operator.
That's
If you
not what
recall.
he was talking about. Two different things. Are you talking about
I'm talking about, was there a complaint by a resident about odor from treatment plants, treatment plant 2?
there was a resident that showed up at the Mud 60 meeting to talk about his, he walks by there frequently, I think, with his family, and said that he wanted us to look at it. So Esther, so the plan was that Esther would work with him, show him around the plant and take a look at the smell, take a look at it and see if there was any additional smell.
Okay.
So that's the only, there's been no other, to my knowledge, no other complaint or any other comments about it.
Okay. I was just surprised that happened, and I hadn't heard anything about it. And,
They came to Mud 60. It wasn't a Mud 7 issue.
well, except that Mud 7 is right next to the treatment plant.
Sure.
So, anyway, I was just curious.
Eric, sorry. AstroTurf, can you come back to Dave's question? the township fix the AstroTurf or they fix the drainage?
There's the stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Yep.
Was the issue in question, and I think the complaint was surfaced around that there was not I guess the filter fabric fence that would, if it were to rain, it would help protect that from washing off into the nearby stream ditch, roadside ditch, those type of things.
The sports fields on Panther Creek, on Panther Branch, off other side of Gosling, east side of Gosling?
Yeah, I don't remember the location. I have to look at
I
it.
think it's those new fields off of Gosling where the buses.
Where's the park?
Yeah, park and ride,
So the
yeah.
project is, yes, they're installing AstroTurf, and the question was, is the proper silt fencing and stormwater
Got it.
pollution prevention
And that,
plan
and township paid
being
that.
implemented? Yes.
So Craig, apparently there's a filament that you put beneath, the cement and the AstroTurf.
Yeah.
They are small balls, and they
It's
found
crushed
a
up
way.
wires.
Yeah, rubber
Yeah.
pellets.
Yeah.
They found a way to soften it.
Into the creeks.
Oh, I see. I see.
Floated away.
So
That
it was a
that
township
the
problem.
concern, right.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
So we posted it, they reached out, what do we do? Implement your plan. And I think,
Agenda item 15, receive staff or ad hoc committee updates on the following. Personnel Committee did meet this afternoon. We have nothing to report. However, General Manager Peterson has something to report from his participation in that meeting.
yes, sure do. I am happy to report that we have identified and have received an acceptance for the open deputy GM position. Received that confirmation this morning. The individual, his name is Kim Wright. She's actually the general manager for Southern County Mud and has been for a few years after their longtime GM retired about 3 or 4 years ago. Southern Montgomery County Mud, which is essentially across the freeway and south of here. So they have, she's been the general manager of that for the last few years. So she has accepted. She will start early November.
Very good. Good find. Congratulations.
We are excited and he has a lot of experience. They a lot of experience with pretty much everything we do. With the exception that we don't they actually have their own water and wastewater plants that they do manage. Obviously, we don't have that at WWA, but everything else that they do, we do. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
I'm sure that she's going to work out fine. Okay, Audit and Finance Committee, Mr. Wilson.
No meeting. Our next chore is going to be the audit itself, which will be a couple of months from now. Be good.
Public Education Committee, Dr. Gaynor.
Yes, the Public Education Committee met today to discuss the infrastructure renewal effort. I've got the following to report out. Of course, you will know that the website and a customer survey were put online on September the 19th. And I've got some very preliminary results of the survey that ended on October 6th. There have been over 1,500 visits to the survey page, and of that number, 366 surveys were received. And the results of the survey are going to be further analyzed, but I just want to share a couple of highlights. 86% of respondents indicated they were satisfied, very satisfied with the quality of water and wastewater services. 72% of the respondents were satisfied or very satisfied with overall maintenance of water and wastewater infrastructure. 63% were satisfied or very satisfied with the value paid for water and wastewater services. Interesting, the top 3 priorities is another part of the survey. The top 3 priorities looking at the water provider leadership are as follows: safe drinking water, reliable and long-term water supply, and sustainability of water and wastewater resources. So with respect to, from the standpoint of quality of life, infrastructure is rated as the most important. And on the website, there were nearly 1,900 unique visitors to the website on October the 6th. So I think it points to the rollout of both the website and survey going reasonably well. The community working group membership is being built out. The last meeting was General Manager Peterson with the presidents of the village associations at the township. But hopefully very soon we will get names. The first meeting of the working group should be in November, and they will be an independent body to look at the communications efforts that we are undertaking. The other part is to populate the website with more information. Summary sheets are being developed for already approved infrastructure projects, either at the design stage or the construction stage. And then in addition to that, there'll be more information developed for a number of items. The independent study of the wastewater recovery facility #1, that's the Carollo study, you'll recall we discussed. The condition assessment of the asbestos cement water lines. Information on infrastructure project approvals process and timing. And then also, I think it's important that individual mud infrastructure projects are also, that information is also conveyed to customers. And that's my report.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Eichelberger, any need to recess to closed session? Very good. That brings us to agenda item 19, discussion for matters for placement on future agendas. Anybody have anything? Hearing none? Meeting adjourned.